I am 22 female, and I work full-time at a local steakhouse-style restaurant. There's a policy with the employees regarding free food based on the length of your shift, and the other day I was working a double, which meant I got 2 free meals, one at the end of my first shift and one at the end of my second. There are a few things we as employees can't pick for our free meals due to costs, but we still have access to nearly the entire menu. Another part of this policy is that if we pick something, and one of the ingredients required is almost gone, we're allowed to keep our pick and tell the customer that we're sold out of that particular item. This applies to all sides, salads, soups, etc. Usually though, if we say we're out, we really did run out regardless of employee meal picks. Anyways, on the day that I worked my double, we were about 2 hours out from closing and I sat a couple who were on a first date. Just assuming by some things they said, plus he name-dropped a popular dating app. When they were ready to order their meals, the girl just so happened to ask for sirloin. But that was the cut I chose for my second meal and we were down to our last one. I apologized and told her that we were out, and the pouted and told me she would need another minute to decide. Her date shot me a dirty look and told me he needed more time now, too, so I went to check on my other tables. They seemed to be having a good date, laughing a lot and smiling. But they were immediately quiet and standoffish every time I checked on them, and interrupted me with, "Just the check, please," while I was asking if they'd like any dessert. I brushed it off, as it's not the first time I've had a rude customer, and brought them their bill. He wrote a big 0 on the tip line and a little note that read, "Thanks for ruining my date. Hope your night sucks too." I told my coworkers during closing, who all agreed the guy was being an ass. But when I called up my dad the next day and the topic of work and those particular customers came up, he told me I should have been less selfish and just let the woman have the sirloin and that I should have picked something else. He told me they didn't handle it very well, but that young lady had probably been looking forward to that steak. You knew you could have given it to her and you didn't. I'm honestly a little disappointed in you. That really hurt my feelings and I've been wondering if I was actually in the wrong. I don't believe it was a money thing. The guy ordered a pretty expensive seafood dish and the girl had one of our pricier cocktails. The sirloin is not our cheapest steak option. Yes, I'm aware that it's a weird policy. But it's our policy and my bosses encourage employee satisfaction so that we can ensure customer satisfaction. I do not eat steak for free every day I work there. I have it once every 1 to 2 weeks. I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment, that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all, that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me. I am 20 female, have recently moved out of my mother's house for college. I enrolled in scholarship. The other night, my mother wanted her, my younger brother, and I to have dinner together. It's been a while since we've spoken, and I'm afraid this might happen again. We were having a nice night, the dinner was delicious, and honestly, we were all having a good time. Eventually, we got onto the topic of how things were when I was younger. I made the comment on how her behavior when I was younger made me feel like I missed out on a lot of things as a child. She disagrees, and tells me that I'm being dramatic, and that my childhood was perfect. Quote, "I was lucky to have a mom who cared as much as she did. My mother gave birth to me when she was 18. My father walked out when I was young, due to a personal conflict between the two. So, she raised me on her own until I was 7. She met a guy, and they ended up having a kid together, my younger brother. He was a golden child to my mom. His father was only a temporary item, as he left as well, soon after. Although the father of my brother was still visible in his life, I didn't have anyone to look up to as a father figure. Eventually, my mom went through a phase of depression after they separated. She started to care less and less about her children, and more about her parties and men she wanted to sleep with. It ended up getting so bad that by the time I was 10, I was a full-time caretaker of my younger brother. With the exceptions of the weekends he was with his father. I started to cook, clean, do everyone's laundry, and take care of everything outside of the boundaries of my home. From ages 13 to 15 I began missing out and losing good friends because I wasn't able to participate in any activity related to anyone else. I didn't get a car or a phone until I was 18, and even then I wasn't allowed to leave my house. I graduated senior year with flying colors and ended up getting a scholarship to a really good college. I took this opportunity not only to focus on myself, but to also help my mother realize that I was not going to be around forever. When she found out I got the scholarship, she threw a fit and told me I wasn't allowed to leave my responsibilities here at home. I left a week after the conversation. I did make sure that my younger brother was safe with his second guardian at the time. My mother and I talked on some occasions but never really kept contact. We got together, and you know the story. She told me I am an asshole for saying that she never really took care of me or my younger brother. I told her that eventually, she will need to get help and stop victimizing herself. But I'm starting to feel guilty, and that maybe I was dramatic after all. I've officially decided that I no longer need my mother in my life at this point in time. I'm now going to only focus on myself, and working towards a successful career in law. Of course, my mom won't take it well, but it won't really matter to her in the long run. Her children never really mattered to her. I'm going to stay in contact with my younger brother, though. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't possibly go through the same amount of trauma I did. My girlfriend and I have been dating the past 5 years, since college. After graduation, we were semi-long distance, living close enough that we alternately visited almost every weekend. In 2018, and got a job in my city, and we found a place and moved in together. Now's a good time to mention the security cameras in our house. Break-ins are unfortunately common where we live. We thus got some motion-activated cameras, one of which has a view of our kitchen, to monitor the back door. The cameras only record when there's motion so they can retain footage for a very long time. And of course knows this. About a year ago, and started complaining I wasn't contributing equally to chores. I've been obsessive about chores my whole life. Growing up, not doing the dishes meant no video games for a week. When I lived with roommates, I was always the chore Nazi, making damn sure we all stuck to our chore wheel. And is just as fastidious about chores, so we just naturally alternated who did what. I'd just been brushing her remarks off, but over the last few months they've become much more aggressive. E.g. I was vacuuming and said, "Look at you finally cleaning up around here." I replied that we alternated vacuuming, to which she retorted, "No, you've vacuumed maybe twice since I moved in." Exchanges like this have been happening so frequently that I began to doubt my own recollection. Am I not as clean as I thought? Finally, she exploded at me last week. She said that having to stay home constantly over the past weeks exposed how little I do around the house, and that she didn't move in just to be my maid. Questioning my own sanity, I spent a few hours going through the entire 1.5-year archive of security camera footage and tallied the exact number of times the kitchen cam caught each of us doing dishes. Our cleaning supplies, vacuum, mop, etc., are in the kitchen pantry, so I also tallied up how many times we grabbed cleaning stuff. To my vindication, the tally showed that we indeed split chores equally. She vacuumed / mopped 5 more times than I did. I did dishes 20 more times than she did. Given that we vacuum / mop at least once a week and do dishes at least every day, these are insignificant differences over the year and a half we've lived together. When I confronted Anne, she shrugged off her behavior as remembering things differently, but the real sin here was what I did, which she called an unforgivable violation of her privacy, akin to abusive stalking. She has broken up with me and is trying to move out, although obviously this is difficult due to current circumstances. I'm totally heartbroken, and was the love of my life, and I can't believe she destroyed our relationship like this. To make matters worse, she told many of our friends, who are mostly siding with her. They've been texting me that what I did was creepy, abusive, controlling, invasive, etc. I'm at a loss. I'm beginning to think I'm the one who's off base here.